And I'll tell you what, if I were ever, I'd be the greatest women's basketball coach in history. Because I don't like LeBron James. I like Michael Jordan much better. But I'd go up to LeBron James. It doesn't matter. I'd say, LeBron, did you ever have any desire to be a woman? Because what I'd love you to do is star on my team that I'm building up. I will have the greatest team in history. They'll never lose. Nobody will come within 70 points of this team. Now, we have to change that, and we have to make it okay to talk about it. You know, the young lady I was talking about is afraid to talk about it. She's shunned and she's canceled when she talks about it. This is crazy. Right, Kellyanne? I see my...
All right, let's get into it right now, because yet again, we have another example of the deranged, delusional, dangerous reality that the left wants all of us to accept as truth. And it's not. And it seems like now we have a situation, ladies and gentlemen, where it's coming back to bite them in the you-know-what. So let me just go ahead and catch you guys up on what's been happening right now in the WNBA, because they continue to embarrass themselves. And so you have this situation going on after WNBA player, as you see on your screen, number 8 right there with the Fever jersey on, Sophia Cunningham, came out advocating for women to be protected from men in their sport. And as a result of her defending women, you had other players and coaches in the WNBA come out against her, as it seems like they forgot exactly why they have a W in their league's name. And so now, as a result of them taking this position, you just heard President Trump speaking out as far as, hey, if he was a WNBA coach, since there seems to be this acceptance of men playing in their league now, he would go about recruiting players like a LeBron James type to dominate the league and pretty much never lose a game if we want to be honest and really think about it. But the reason why I want to get into this is because this is a prime example of the loony liberal left and exactly the direction they will take this country if they are allowed to versus the right. And so we got a lot to get into, ladies and gentlemen, because apparently now you have former NBA players who are saying, okay, if you guys are all welcoming open arms to men playing in your sport, then we'd like to enter our names as far as being eligible to join the league. And let's see how many WNBA teams come, running for men who now identify as women in order to play WNBA basketball. Let's see how many teams come running to snatch up 6'10", 250-pound men, basically, who can jump higher, run faster, and are stronger in every way. And now, because they identify as women for the purpose of basketball, want to join the league. Let's see what comes about that, right? And so we got a lot to get into, ladies and gentlemen. And so let's just go ahead and start right here, because you had ESPN praising Minnesota Lynx coach, ladies and gentlemen, who, after the statements from Sophia Cunningham, she wore and take a look at this, Trans Kids Belong shirt. And so that obviously end up spurring this fake virtue signaling where you now had liberal couples wearing Trans Kids Belong t-shirts at WNBA games that nobody's watching really. And so, this is where we're at right now. This is where we're at, and we'll end up going even further, if the left is, if it was up to the left. Yeah, and so apparently Sophia Cunningham may be the only player in this league who has the guts and the courage to actually stand up and define what a woman versus a biological man is, and why, they shouldn't be competing against each other, because even her coach, the Fever's coach, Stephanie White, claims she's not educated enough, ladies and gentlemen, from a scientific standpoint. They want to use science now to decide if men should compete in women's sports. Really? They don't know if the science tells them. Once again, this is the whole thing that women were fighting for, their own spaces, being able to have their own space. I mean, wasn't that the whole point of creating a WNBA? If not, we would just have an NBA and let the women, have at it if they could make it, right? Nonetheless, listen to what the coach had to say. Check this out.
What's your stance? What is your stance on men or athletes who test as biological male participating in women's sports? What's your personal stance?
Yeah, I don't know that I would say that I'm educated enough from a scientific standpoint. I don't ever believe that exclusion is an answer. I just don't. I do think, when we think about various levels of sport, various governing bodies of sport and things that go into that, like I said, I'm not educated enough at the different levels. I know growing up, I played with the boys all the time.
So
there weren't girl sports.
Would you welcome a biological male in WNBA?
Again, it's like, I don't know, when we talk about biological male and scientifically where we are, I think it's a totally different scenario. As I said, I'm not educated enough in terms of transgender and transitioning to give you a smart answer. I would say, though, that I just don't feel like exclusion is an answer, and I think that we need to have deeper, more layered conversations.
And you'd be okay with them in the locker room?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can't make any of this up, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, really. And so that is the coach of the Indiana Fever, Sophia Cunningham. That's why I said, hey, she must be the only one in this league who has some confidence to speak up and say was basically, obvious. As this coach, she does not know the science, and she's not clear enough on the science, ladies and gentlemen. I find that quite ironic. Now they want to make sure the science matches, which, I mean, somebody must have skipped, seventh grade biology, as far as things. I mean, really, how much science do we need to help us figure out the difference between men and women, and why there's a W, why you had your whole entire league created specifically for women? But here we are with this tomfoolery, as what I could call it, tomfoolery, as this WNBA coach tries to use the logic and the example of, well, when I was younger, I would always compete against the boys, and that's how I grew up. Well, of course, because when you're 5 years old or 10 or 13 years old, sure, it may be pretty fair to say that boys and girls can compete on a certain level where it's not going to be that big of a difference. And then there's this little thing that happens called puberty. Where testosterone kind of kicks into overdrive for young men as they grow and develop. And you don't kind of really get that same effect with girls as they grow into women. And so as a result, men are able to develop more muscle, more strength, greater lung capacity, all these things that make us biologically different and give men an extreme advantage when it comes to physical abilities and activities overall, pretty much, which is why at the highest levels, we don't let men compete against women, because we understand that, if you're trying to protect women and their sports, then you might not want to let men come in and ransack the place, because if you do, then it will be dominated by them, and then you have nothing. But apparently the WNBA, that seems to not be a big concern of theirs to clarify. But nonetheless, you got these woke coaches using weak excuses, as you heard her say. Exclusion is not the answer. That's what she believes, ladies and gentlemen, that you can't exclude anyone. It's just not fair, if you ask her. But she's not the only one. Let's continue. This is all quite entertaining to really look, because what ends up happening next, is we're going to get into, ladies and gentlemen, is leaving the WNBA with quite the conundrum now, as they've left this door open now. And so, but first, here goes another one of these WNBA coaches who seems to want to be all inclusive and all in on letting everybody, join in on the party. Take a listen.
It's about inclusivity. It's about allowing everyone to be their authentic self. I'm big on that, just because I have been criticized for my height, for my ethnicity. I've been in those "you shouldn't belong here" many times. And for me, I don't want that space, especially Golden State, to ever feel like that. So I'm all about women, little girls deserving to play, and that includes trans women.
Yeah, and so there you go. Now you got a WNBA coach basically using her experience as far as what she experienced because of her ethnicity, and she's comparing that to allowing biological men to be included to play in the women's sports. This is where we're at. I mean, listen, maybe I need to go ahead and go, sign me up, make a quick couple $100,000. I still might have a little something left in the tank. I played some basketball back in the day. Maybe I could earn a couple bucks, because that's what you have a couple former NBA players considering now. Because this is where it gets interesting, ladies and gentlemen. If the WNBA is claiming that they are all inclusive, they're not allowing any discrimination when it comes to if a biological man, a trans woman, wants to compete and join the WNBA and a team wants to sign them, then have at it. They're including them. They're not discriminating. And so this is where it gets quite interesting, ladies and gentlemen, because now you have former NBA players, and here goes one of them, Royce White, a former first-round pick, says he's declaring for the 2027 WNBA draft, claiming he now identifies as transgender for the purpose of playing professional basketball. And he's 6'8", must weigh about a good 250, 260. Clearly will be the strongest person in the league, jump the highest. And so let's just take a listen to this.
Well, earlier this week, I made the announcement. I'm transgender. I'm a woman. I identify as sometimes identifying as a woman for purposes of basketball, professional basketball. So I'll be declaring for the WNBA draft in 2027 as well. I think I'd be unstoppable. But I'm a team first guy. I'm a pass first kind of player. I do the little things. I led my team in all 5 major stat categories at Iowa State University. So I do a little bit of everything. I'll do whatever the coach needs me to do. I'll do whatever the girls need me to do. I think the WNBA could come out and make a definitive statement about guys with a pair of balls playing in the women's association. But hey, that'd be probably too much like right. So, and I don't want to be discriminated against. No, I want fair treatment. I'm a black, I'm a young black, hopefully United States senator that would like a fair chance to participate as a sometimes identifying as a transgender woman athlete.
Yeah, and so there you have that. And so do I think a WNBA team will actually seriously draft a player like this, even though it would be to their advantage as far as competitive wise? No, they're not going to do it, because then they would basically be making a mockery of their game. It would become even more of a laughing stock. But nonetheless, this is now the place you are when you decide that you can't even define what a woman is, that you want to say we're all inclusive. You want to make all these broad range, delusional, far left statements that leave the door open for definitions, for it to be interpreted. And that's where it's going to get really tricky. And I'm going to get into that into a moment. But first, here goes another NBA first round draft pick, Enes Kanter. And he's also, I believe he's a 7-footer. And so, he would be quite the dominant player, but he's also declared himself. And so, just take a listen to this also.
After careful consideration and reviewing the current eligibility guidelines, I am officially declaring myself a WNBA prospect. If simply declaring who you are is all that's required, then I meet every single requirement necessary to compete in the WNBA. My team and I have carefully examined the WNBA's eligibility criteria and governing framework surrounding self-identification and inclusion. Based on the current guidelines, I can and am officially declaring my eligibility for the upcoming WNBA draft in May 2027. I am definitely not here to mock, make fun of, or disrespect any community or personal choices. I am simply asking that the current rules be applied equally to everyone. The rules that represent the very values many WNBA players and coaches have publicly advocated for. My team and I are prepared to ensure these guidelines are applied equally, consistently, and without exception. And I look forward to the WNBA honoring its stated principles. See you at training camp.
Listen, these two have a point. Because when the left has made the decision up that in their world, in their reality, any man who simply wants to identify, he wants you to call him a woman because that's what he sees himself as, therefore that's what he is. Doesn't matter if he dresses like a woman would typically dress. It doesn't matter if he appears to look like what a woman would, you perceive a woman to look like. None of that matters, because one, they can't define what a woman is, and they want to be all-inclusive. And so you can't discriminate because, well, it's clear and obvious these two are men. Whoa, that sounds a little bit like you are discriminating and assuming their gender. How dare you? These are just two men who identify as women but still enjoy to dress in, what you would say how men dress. That doesn't make them any less of a woman than biological women in your delusional reality. So guess we got to go with it. This is where they want to take us, ladies and gentlemen. This is where this thing could go, because they have no guardrails, because they want to be all inclusive, because they can't think with logic and common sense, which seem to escape them. This is where things can go very quickly if they are allowed to gain back power, if you give them opportunity where they are allowed to write the policies and the laws. And so now you have the WNBA commissioner. She sent a memo to all of the teams that the league will be establishing a task force to discuss men, transgender women competing in the WNBA, and refused to say flat out that men should not be allowed to compete in the WNBA. And so just take a listen to this, ladies and gentlemen.
We recognize that this is a complex and nuanced topic, and we will continue to have important conversations with all of you in the Players Association in the weeks and months ahead. The league will always approach this topic thoughtfully, respectfully, and in alignment with the longstanding values of our league. Our player eligibility rules, unlike the eligibility rules of some other leagues and governing bodies, are collectively bargained. Preserving the integrity of our game and ensuring fair competition will always remain among the league's highest priorities.
But see, that's the thing, is it's not complex.
No.
It's like the simplest thing in the entire world. Men and men's sports, women and women's sports. There's no complexity or nuance to it whatsoever. And have you guys ever realized that it's never the top guys who want to suddenly become women and compete against women? You don't see LeBron James out there being like, I'm going to be a woman and play. It's always mediocre men who then play against women and clean up. Of course, you'd want to play someone with their arm tied behind their back because it makes it easier for you. What I can't understand is why women are going along with it. You can look at Leah Thomas with the swimming, or Laura Hubbard, who was a man and then all of a sudden became this Olympic weightlifter. Or you can look, there's this French basketball player now who's cleaning house because obviously it's a dude playing against women. So it's ridiculous.
And here goes that French trans basketball player says if the WNBA offers something, he won't say no. He averages 20 rebounds a game, 21 points per game, stands at 6'3" tall. I mean, hey, got to play to win. Hey, he wants to compete. You want to win the championship out there. There should be a team knocking. There should be teams knocking down his door. Yeah, and so I find all of this extremely hilarious. This is quite just entertaining, in my opinion, just to sit back and watch, because the left has done this to themselves. This is all on them as far as putting themselves now in this very entertaining for me position where you get to sit back and watch them try and use whatever. And please believe, ladies and gentlemen, ultimately what the WNBA is going to come out with as far as their statement and as far as their whatever the task force ends up coming to is going to be very hypocritical, is going to contradict everything that you hear these players and coaches and that the league says they stand for. They're not going to put themselves in a position where you can have former NBA players like the two gentlemen I showed you, Royce White and Enes Kanter, would actually be able to come into their league. It's not going to happen. And so they'll put out some statement now and probably hopefully this thing goes away. But whatever they do come out with will end up contradicting. I can almost guarantee you it's going to contradict exactly the thing that they say they stand for. But let's go ahead and check out this clip right here, because Stephen A. Smith, he has been outspoken about this issue and protecting women's sports. And so just go ahead and take a listen to this right here.
Careful consideration and reviewing the current eligibility guidelines, I am officially declaring myself a WNBA prospect. If simply declaring who you are is all that's required, then I meet every single requirement necessary to compete in the WNBA.
So you see what Enes Kanter had to say, right? You see how much of a mess this is becoming, right? And everybody want to act like, oh my goodness, we don't want to hate on trans. We don't want to hate on trans folks. That's not what that's about. Anybody who's hating on them should be ashamed of themselves. The WNBA, the NBA, and everybody else in between is absolutely right when they talk about not violating people's civil rights and liberties, not being hateful, not engaging in hate in any way, shape, form, or fashion, whether verbally, physically, or otherwise. We all know that. But what Enes Kanter is pointing to is about competition. So for somebody to transition from male to female, and for folks to act like it would be okay for them to participate in the WNBA is ridiculous. And when you have athletes from the WNBA saying that they're looking out for and speaking up on behalf of girls, because it would clearly be an unfair advantage to a trans athlete over people born female, what's the problem? What's the problem? We got to have common sense. And yes, Enes Kanter is going a bit too far, but he's right to do so to make a point. And Royce White, former NBA player, now a conservative pundit, he's right too because he's trying to make a point. Certain things are beyond ridiculous, and you got to call it out just to send the message. Do you get it now? Are you sure you want to continue this subject? Are you sure you want to continue on this path? Sure you don't want to be political pawns? Fine. Then understand that the WNBA is for girls and people born female, and leave it at that. And stop acting like you don't know. Otherwise, there'll be a lot more Enes Kanters. And we all know y'all don't want that.
Yeah, and so now the WNBA is receiving this embarrassing attention, all because they can't operate in reality that we all understand that women fought for, Title IX, all of that, ability to have their own space, WNBA, NCAA women's sports, the whole nine. It was a reason why it was created. It was a reason why they were able to have their spaces. It wasn't so that men could then come in and just say, hey, we want to compete against the women because we're mediocre on our side, not as good against the men. And so we want to come in and play against the women. Now, you know, like as Stephen A. put it, you have these two guys who, you know, were first round draft picks who were able to reach the pinnacle of their profession, basically, you know, saying, well, if that's how you want to do it, I'm going to challenge you at your own words. And let's see how, you know, true you stick to them now. And so we'll see. But those are my thoughts on the update. Now I want to hear from you. As always, smash that thumbs up button. That's the best way to let me know you enjoy the content. For more, subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.